Congressman Crenshaw, Mr. Hughes, guest on this podium today, ladies and gentlemen, family, friends, patriots who have come out on this day. As Congressman Crenshaw said, you could be doing anything today. But no, you stopped. As we all have, we have stopped life today long enough to come out from our barbecue areas, from our beaches, to say thank you, to pay tribute to these special men and women who did this. They raised their hand and they gave that oath of office. That is what this is all about today. Those who have made that sacrifice. And since our beginnings of this ceremony on 30 May of 1868, when we first put flowers out and flags out in remembrance of those who have served, we've been doing this as a nation, and we must always do it. I mentioned that oath of office, and the genesis of that oath is just tremendous when you really look back and you study it. Because it was 1789, the very first president of the United States of America gets that oath of office, the first draft as it comes to his desk, and he goes, "That's not what I wanted to say." That same Washington who stood outside the door of the Continental Congress as 54 brave souls put pen to paper, and they said, "We are hereby declaring our independence." Where does that conviction come from with him? That is that same Washington who was out with the troops, who knew how to lead from the front, to get out from behind his desk, grab his sword, and get out in front of the troops and say, "Follow me for freedom." That same Washington, and I've told this story before, those in the audience who may have heard it, I promise you I will tell it with the same enthusiasm that I always have, because Washington at Trenton, to me, is one of the greatest stories of leadership the world has ever seen. December 23rd, 1776, freezing conditions on the edge of the Delaware River. Washington has the impossible task of going out to his 2,000 troops and asking them to do the impossible, and that is to go across the Delaware into the town of Trenton to fight giants. The Hessian forces are camped over at Trenton. He gets on one knee in the snow by his horse and he goes, "Oh God, I do not know how to get out to talk to these troops, to tell them to do this. They've barely got soles on the bottom of their feet. I've barely got enough beef to put in the broth for that stew to taste like anything. But yet I've got to go ask them on this freezing night to go across that river and fight the Hessians." He gets up from his knee, from that prayer, gets on his horse, and he begins trotting slowly into the camp. And in those days, it's very unusual to see the general coming out by the campfires at night to walk in amongst the troops. And one by one, they started to see him, and they go, that's the general. That's General Washington coming. Here he comes. And they gathered around him. And he said, "Soldiers of freedom, I have something very special that I must ask you tonight. On this day, where tomorrow we're going to be celebrating the birth of our Savior in this country, all across this great country, where most people are stopping to celebrate that, I must ask you to go to battle with me. And I know the conditions. I know you don't have hardly soles on the bottom of your shoes. I know I can barely feed you. And I know you know what is on the other side of this river. You've heard the rumors. They're giant men, but they're killers. But here's what the difference is. They are paid to kill. They are fighting for money. You, soldiers, are fighting for freedom and are fighting for generations to come in this great nation." The weather set in, and it was so bad on the December the 24th and the 25th that we couldn't make the crossing as expected. But on the morning of December 26th, we arrive on the shores of Trenton, and it was so cold that even the weapons that we carried were frozen solid. We couldn't even use the most modern, the rifles, the muskets that were in our possession. And Washington himself sent the order down lines, "Fix bayonets. Fix bayonets." Can you imagine now? Not only do you have to fight these giants, you now have to fight them hand to hand. History records that in an hour and 45 minutes, they went into Trenton and they killed and they captured the entire Hessian garrison, restoring the morale in our troops, feeding them, clothing them, and the word went out across America that we're in it to win. That Washington, now 1789, sitting at his desk, the paper comes back in. Let me see that now. John Adams standing behind him, he writes it out. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend not man, not woman, not idol, not anything. I will support and defend a document called the Constitution of the United States. Period. End of discussion. That was the original oath. And he smiled, and Adams smiled, and they walked out. Through the years, we've expanded that oath of office to where we now raise our hand proudly in front of the American flag and support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We take that oath as a sacred oath, and we listen to it. We make that oath, and it reminds us in the next line how we serve elected leadership, because we'll also obey the orders. Those orders authorized by Congress. In this nation, we have the right to vote, and we must never forget that, because we send our congressional leaders there for the people, voted on by the people. And they get up there, and our oath of office reminds us that we will serve that elected leadership when it says we will obey the orders of the President of the United States. Those orders authorized by Congress that get to his desk that make them lawful orders for him to give us. And it continues on, and I love this next line, that I make this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. I'm not running from anything here. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter, so help me God. That oath of office that every person that is laid to rest at this beautiful cemetery, this 525 acres authorized by our wonderful Congress that cared enough to put this acreage here, these people all said that oath of office to support and defend our Constitution. That is where we are today. We are here on this day, on these grounds, to say thank you to them for that oath, for taking that oath, for taking the time out of their lives to say, I care enough about this country that I will support and defend it each and every day. You care enough to get out and make a difference, and you cared enough today to come out. I want to finish with the original quote, and it's the only part that I will have to look at notes on, but I don't want to miss anything about this because it was the original General Order of the Grand Army of the Republic, 30 May 1868, General Order 11. As it was issued, an excerpt from it that speaks to land like this, that speaks about the people that lie to rest here, that speaks about the spirit of America that has fought for our freedom. And in this general order it says, and I quote, let no wanton foot tread rudely on such hallowed grounds. Let pleasant paths invite the coming and going of reverent visitors and fond mourners. Let no vandalism or avarice or neglect, no ravages of time testify to the present or coming generations that we have forgotten as a people the cost of a free and undivided republic. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless you for stopping your lives today, getting away from those beaches, those barbecue areas to come out and say thank you as a proud nation to those who have served. God bless you and this great nation. Thank you.